What if Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the end of the story, but the blueprint? And what if Jaguar Wright is screaming that Diddy is the next chapter no one wants to read out loud? This isn't a report. This is a warning wrapped in whispers, patterns, and a silence so loud it feels rehearsed. Because when Jaguar Wright speaks, she doesn't speak in headlines, she speaks in scars, in memory, in names people flinch at, and in questions the industry never answers directly. And right now, her loudest claim isn't about one man. It's about a system that survives by swallowing its own secrets. Hollywood didn't freeze because nothing happened. Hollywood froze because something did. Before the names, before the parallels, before the panic, there's one truth that keeps resurfacing like a body nobody officially identified. The people at the top decide what reality feels like. They decide what you're allowed to see, what gets buried under paperwork, and what disappears under the excuse of too much information. And the moment you realize that, everything else starts to line up.
Like, I think holding these files, as long as they've held these files with all of the information that's in it, has made it very clear that the people that are at the head of all of this can do whatever they want and make people believe whatever they want.
That line alone changes the temperature of the room, because this isn't about files anymore. It's about power, about perception, about who controls the pause button when things get uncomfortable. Jaguar Wright's voice lives inside this idea that nothing leaks accidentally and nothing stays hidden without permission. And when you accept that, the Epstein story stops being a tragedy and starts looking like a strategy. Millions of documents didn't come out to enlighten you. They came out to exhaust you, to blur the edges, to make you tired before you ever reached the names that mattered most. Information overload isn't transparency, it's camouflage. And the industry knows that if they give you everything, you'll find nothing. Jaguar has been saying this for years, long before people were brave enough to listen, long before Epstein's name became a cultural shorthand for unspeakable access, long before Diddy's name started floating through the same conversations in hushed tones and side glances. Because the pattern isn't about what happens, it's about who survives it.
That all of these files and all of these documents, and let's just be clear, we're talking about 3 million documents that have been released so far. When you release that amount of information, you're doing it to fatigue people. You know, it's going to take people quite some time to get through all of these files, and who knows how long they're going to be available. Stuff might start go missing, things of that nature. But we all should be going through and combing through every inch of everything that's going on, because when they put that much out there, they're hoping you're going to just overlook something. They're hoping you're going to get fatigued from all of the information, and you're not.
Fatigue is the real cover-up. Confusion is the real security system. And silence, the kind that comes after a name is mentioned too many times, is the loudest response of all. This is where Jaguar Wright becomes dangerous to the narrative, because she doesn't just question individuals, she questions the architecture. She talks about how predators don't operate alone. They operate inside ecosystems that reward discretion, loyalty, and fear. And when she draws a line from Epstein to Diddy, she's not saying history is repeating itself. She's saying history never stopped. The industry hates comparisons. Comparisons create patterns. Patterns invite questions. And questions threaten careers built on selective memory. Epstein wasn't powerful because he was hidden. He was powerful because he was known and still protected. That's the part people forget. Everyone knew something. Nobody knew everything. And the few who did, they disappeared, discredited, or died under circumstances that never quite settled. Jaguar Wright isn't alleging, she's observing. And what she's observing is the same shape moving through different rooms. That's not an accusation, that's a chill. Because when someone asks if two situations are the same, they're not claiming guilt, they're pointing at resemblance. And resemblance is what makes people nervous. Not proof, not verdicts, but patterns you can't unsee once someone names them out loud. Jaguar's question isn't did he do it? Her question is, why does this feel familiar? Why do the same silences form? Why do the same gatekeepers appear? Why does the same disbelief greet every voice that tries to speak before the evidence becomes unavoidable?
Like, seriously, at this point in time, to talk about Epstein and to talk about Diddy and to not see them as the same situation, like, there's so many intersections between Epstein and Diddy that we're not even paying attention to.
Hollywood has a long history of freezing people out, not because they're wrong, but because they're early. And being early is the most dangerous position of all, because if you speak before the collapse, you get labeled unstable. If you speak after the collapse, you get called brave. Jaguar Wright has lived on the wrong side of that timeline, and she knows exactly how the industry punishes people who don't wait their turn to tell the truth. Then there's the silence that feels almost coordinated, the names that surface again and again in flight logs, party photos, backroom introductions, yet never quite cross into public accountability. The kind of silence that isn't absence, but agreement. Jaguar doesn't scream about everyone. She points to who isn't talking, and that absence becomes its own form of testimony. That's not about one person. That's about how protection works. Because in these circles, proximity is currency, access is leverage, and silence is survival. People aren't protected because they're innocent. They're protected because they're useful. They know too much. They've seen too much. And the industry understands that sometimes the quietest people are the ones holding the loudest secrets. This is where the fear creeps in. Because if Jaguar Wright is right, if Epstein was a hub and not a lone wolf, then removing one man never dismantles the system. It just reroutes it. And that brings us to the part of the story that never sits right. The ending that doesn't close.
And people who were regulars in the Epstein crew. Like, I'm still shocked that there's nothing about Naomi Campbell really coming forward yet. I'm surprised. I'm like bitterly surprised. Her time.
Yeah, they said her name was on the list like the most as far as like flight records.
Yeah.
She was on a lot of flights.
A lot of flights.
The death that answers nothing and raises everything. One missing minute in a prison, under surveillance, with cameras everywhere except where it mattered most. That missing minute became a symbol, not of conspiracy, but of control. Because whether Epstein died by his own hand or not, the result was the same: a trial that never happened, names that never testified, and questions that never reached a courtroom. And Jaguar Wright's real fear isn't about how Epstein died. It's about what his death prevented. Because when someone knows too much, the most effective silencing isn't murder, it's erasure. It's making the truth unprovable. It's turning witnesses into rumors and evidence into speculation. And if you can't prove it, you can't punish it, which is why her question lingers like smoke in a sealed room. If Epstein's story ended this way, what happens to the next man people start comparing him to? And why does Hollywood suddenly stop talking every time that comparison gets too clear? Silence doesn't fall randomly. It drops when people recognize a pattern they've been trained not to name. And that's exactly what happens every time Jaguar Wright's words start echoing a little too clearly across the industry. Because the real danger isn't what she says, it's how much of it connects. Hollywood is comfortable with scandal. It thrives on mess, survives on controversy, and monetizes downfall like entertainment. But there's a specific kind of story that makes even the loudest rooms go quiet. Not because it's shocking, but because it threatens infrastructure, careers, alliances, legacies, and mutual protection agreements that were never written down but always understood. Jaguar isn't talking about gossip as spectacle. She's talking about gossip as memory, as lived experience, as something that keeps resurfacing no matter how aggressively it's dismissed. And the dismissal always comes first, before the evidence, before the confirmation, before the apologies. There's always that same reaction: she's unstable, she's bitter, she's exaggerating, she's reaching. The script never changes, only the names do. And once you've seen that cycle enough times, you start to understand why some people never make it to the part where they're believed. That's what makes Jaguar Wright's warnings uncomfortable. Not dramatic, uncomfortable. Because she isn't introducing chaos. She's pointing at how organized it already is. The comparison between Epstein and Diddy doesn't rely on identical crimes. It relies on identical mechanics. Access, influence, parties that double as gateways, power that feels untouchable until suddenly it isn't, and a long trail of people who were just there but somehow never questioned. Jaguar keeps circling back to one idea: predators don't hunt in isolation. They hunt where silence is enforced, they hunt where fame protects, and they hunt where speaking up costs more than staying quiet. The industry doesn't fear accusations, it fears patterns, because once the audience starts recognizing patterns, the illusion of randomness collapses. That's why the freeze happens. You can feel it when conversations abruptly change subject, when interviews get edited, when certain questions never make it past the press team, when once vocal insiders suddenly don't want to speculate. Silence isn't absence, it's coordination. And coordination doesn't happen without incentive. What Jaguar suggests, without ever needing to state it directly, is that Epstein wasn't shocking because he existed. He was shocking because he fell. Because the system doesn't expect its middlemen to become liabilities. They're supposed to operate, connect, and disappear into irrelevance when the moment passes. But Epstein didn't fade, he detonated. And the blast radius scared everyone who ever benefited from proximity to unchecked power. That's why the question of his death still matters. Not because of how he died, but because of when. Right before testimony, right before names, right before the curtain could be pulled back far enough to expose the structure instead of just the face. And Jaguar's unspoken fear hangs heavy in the air. If history teaches the industry anything, it's that when too many people start asking the right questions, the story finds a way to end early. This is where Diddy's name becomes radioactive, not because of proof, but because of proximity to a pattern the industry already recognizes. When Jaguar says the intersections aren't being paid attention to, she's pointing at the same signals people ignored before. Too much access, too much influence, too many whispers that never quite make it to daylight. Too many people saying everybody knew something but nobody wanting to say what. Hollywood doesn't freeze because it believes Jaguar Wright is wrong. Hollywood freezes because it remembers what happened when people said Epstein was untouchable. And here's the part that rarely gets discussed. The fear isn't just legal, it's social, it's economic, it's existential. Because in an industry built on favors and silence, being on the wrong side of a powerful narrative doesn't just cost you work, it costs you protection. That's why some names never speak unless forced. That's why others vanish quietly. That's why people wait until it's safe, until the outcome is already decided, to say they always suspected. Jaguar didn't wait. And waiting is the currency of survival in Hollywood. The freeze also explains why the focus always shifts. One week it's files, another week it's unrelated scandals, another week it's outrage fatigue. The machine keeps moving, not to distract you, but to outpace you. Because if you slow down long enough, you might notice how often the same figures orbit the same spaces without consequence. You might start asking why some people are always present but never accountable. You might start asking why some stories end without endings. You might start asking why the loudest voices go quiet at the same time. Jaguar Wright's role in all of this isn't to convict, it's to disrupt, to make the industry uncomfortable enough that it has to respond, even if that response is silence. Because silence confirms something is being protected, and protection doesn't exist without value. Which brings us back to the most unsettling idea of all. What if Epstein wasn't removed because he was guilty, but because he became unpredictable? What if the real danger wasn't exposure, but loss of control? If that's true, then the real story isn't about crimes, it's about containment, and containment requires examples. One falls, the rest behave. That's why every comparison matters, why every parallel feels charged, why every missing minute, every unspoken name, every edited interview adds weight to Jaguar Wright's warnings. Because she isn't asking you to believe her, she's asking you to notice. Notice who gets defended. Notice who gets dismissed. Notice who disappears. Notice who survives untouched. And most importantly, notice when everyone suddenly stops talking at once. Hollywood doesn't freeze when there's nothing to hide. Hollywood freezes when it recognizes itself in the mirror. And Jaguar Wright, she's the voice refusing to look away.